Hey everyone! Welcome to Anime Dreams. Today, we're diving into an exciting fanfiction concept. What if Naruko was the fox-blooded goddess? Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This channel is all about entertainment and discussion. I do not own any of the anime footage featured in my videos. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Alright, let's jump right in. Naruko Uzumaki. Ninja. Hokage. She was a figure of legend, standing atop the Hokage monument with a gaze that carried the weight of her journey. As she looked out over the village she cherished, a sudden flash of light momentarily blinded her. Before she could react, a massive sphere of dark flame surged toward her, engulfing her in its mysterious energy. The world around her fractured and shattered like glass. The black flames transformed into a radiant white glow, gradually taking the form of a regal-looking woman. Naruko herself became a sphere of light, floating weightlessly. The elegant woman smiled warmly at Naruko's small form before gently passing her to an older, wise-looking woman. With great care, the elder carried the glowing sphere to a grand city built atop a towering mountain, an ancient place with deep-rooted history. As time passed, the sphere of light descended the mountain, morphing into two children. One was Naruko, now appearing as a 7-year-old girl with bright blue eyes and golden hair. Beside her stood a young girl named Annabeth, about the same age, both filled with a sense of adventure. Together, they ran across uneven terrain as it stretched into vast fields and rugged landscapes. Their journey soon became more than just a race. As they pressed forward, 3 more companions joined them: Luke, Talia, and Grover. Their trek became a test of endurance and skill as they navigated obstacles, all while a looming darkness pursued them. At last, they reached a hill overlooking sprawling fields of strawberries, marking the entrance to a familiar camp. Talia, glancing back at the darkness closing in, gave the group a bittersweet smile before turning serious. She urged them to run ahead while she remained behind. The others hesitated but ultimately obeyed, dashing toward safety, except for young Naruko, who stood her ground. Determined to fight alongside her friend, she clutched a makeshift weapon. Talia, however, shook her head. With a firm yet gentle embrace, she bid Naruko farewell and pushed her toward safety. Tears welled up in the young blonde's eyes as she handed her weapon to Talia, a silent gesture of trust, before turning and running to rejoin the others. As Naruko disappeared into the distance, Talia steeled herself. She combined the weapon with her shield and spear, preparing for battle against the encroaching darkness. A fierce storm gathered overhead, and with a deafening boom, a bolt of lightning struck the battlefield. When the light faded, a magnificent tree stood in Talia's place, a lasting testament to her bravery. Time passed. The group grew stronger, united by their shared experiences. Naruko, once an outsider, found herself surrounded by companions who had become family. Annabeth, beaming with pride, watched her newfound sister finally forge friendships. But not all paths remained aligned. Luke, once a trusted friend, slowly distanced himself. A jagged scar marked his face as he gazed upon 2 powerful relics, one a golden sarcophagus, the other a complex symbol of intertwining lines. The temptation was undeniable. With a knowing smirk, he turned back to Naruko, extending a hand in invitation. Yet, despite his persuasive demeanor, Naruko hesitated. She did not accept. Luke's expression darkened, but he said nothing. Instead, he turned away and walked into the shadows, beginning a journey of his own. A new journey begins. Naruko eventually set out on her own adventure, bidding farewell to her sister and friends. They embraced her in a warm send-off, and to her surprise, a girl named Drew, a rather unexpected acquaintance, wished her well with a small kiss on the cheek. Her travels led her to the heart of the United States, Washington, D.C. It was there that she faced a formidable opponent, a massive golden lion. The battle was intense, their movements rapid and precise as emerald green flames swirled around them. In the midst of combat, those flames shifted to a deep black before exploding into countless dark-winged creatures. These birds, covered in an unusual metallic sheen, swarmed toward Naruko. Yet she remained unfazed. Now clad in the lion's pelt, she drew twin weapons, one black, one white, as the wind howled fiercely around her. With expert precision, she took aim and fired, sending plumes of dark smoke into the air as the battle raged on. Her journey had only just begun. Emerging from the dense black smoke, Naruko is flanked by Zoe Nightshade and Artemis, standing at her sides. They find themselves in the heart of a city under siege, surrounded by wraiths whose piercing cries echo through the streets. Without a word, Naruko exchanges a nod with her companions. The camera pans outward, revealing the rest of the huntresses positioned defensively, their mirrored shields raised in a formation reminiscent of Spartan warriors. The brilliant glare from the shields floods the scene, until only a single reflection remains, Naruko's own. The blonde-haired warrior steadies her grip, pointing a weapon forward with unwavering determination before pulling the trigger. The mirror shatters into fragments, leaving nothing but a blinding light. The scene shifts to a dark, decaying forest where Naruko fends off a well-dressed teenager wielding a menacing staff. Just as their clash intensifies, a towering geyser of water erupts between them, transforming into an enormous 8-headed serpent. The creature strikes, sending Naruko tumbling away. Before she can react, a hand extends toward her. She grasps it and looks up to find a figure wearing a jackal mask. Standing side by side, they turn to face the looming creature, their shadows stretching behind them, one resembling a humanoid lion, the other a jackal. Naruko raises her hand, and in an instant, a bolt of lightning crashes down, momentarily turning the world to blinding white. As the light fades, Naruko is seen kneeling, her breath steady, her shadow cast long beside those of her friends. Her gaze lifts, steeled with determination, taking in the vast challenges ahead. In the distance lies a camp built in the style of ancient Roman architecture, colossal figures from forgotten legends, the formidable lord of monsters, Typhon himself, and, at last, a lone boy walking through the desert. That boy is Luke. He strides toward a darkened temple, encircled by a raging sandstorm. As he walks, he glances to the side, catching sight of Naruko. For a fleeting moment, a sickly yellow eye gleams from within the storm, and he smirks before continuing forward, disappearing into the swirling sands. June 30, 2012, forest near Zeus Fist. Naruko took a steady breath, mentally preparing for another rigorous training session. Due to Chiron's concerns about her use of specialized weapons and unconventional combat style, he had assigned one of her friends to observe and ensure she didn't push herself too hard. That friend currently lounged on a nearby rock, looking mildly disinterested as she absent-mindedly inspected her nails. Meanwhile, Juniper, a kind-hearted wood nymph, had volunteered to assist Naruko with her training session. Along with a few of her fellow nature spirits, she had arranged a series of targets for Naruko to practice on. Naruko deeply appreciated their help. While Juniper's assistance came from their friendship, the motivations of the others remained a mystery to her. She assumed they were simply keeping Juniper company, but in truth, some of them harbored quiet admiration for the blonde warrior. Juniper was small and delicate, with wispy amber-colored hair and a graceful, elfin face. She wore a flowing green chiton and simple sandals. Naruko was well aware that her satyr friend, Grover, had feelings for Juniper. However, due to his timid nature, he hesitated to express them. While Naruko suspected that Juniper might feel the same way, she wasn't particularly skilled in matchmaking. After all, she wasn't a child of Aphrodite. All set. Juniper called out, signaling that everything was ready. Naruko gave a nod in response. She stood tall, her signature spiky blonde hair making her stand out among her siblings, who often wondered how she managed to get it to look that way. She wore the standard orange Camp Half-Blood t-shirt, her favorite color, paired with a faded blue hoodie, casually unzipped with the hood up. A pair of well-worn blue jeans and black tennis shoes completed her look. While her eyes held the same stormy quality as her siblings, hers were a striking shade of blue, whereas theirs were typically gray. "All right, let's get started," Naruko said, anticipation glinting in her eyes. Juniper gave an encouraging nod. The girl on the rock briefly glanced up, giving the barest indication that she was paying attention before resuming her casual nail inspection. "Go!" Juniper shouted, signaling the beginning of the session. Her fellow wood nymphs stirred, ready for what was to come. Naruko sprinted through the dense forest, heading toward the clearing where Zeus' fist stood, a rock formation that, in her opinion, and many others, looked suspiciously like a pile of deer droppings. As she ran, she reached into the pockets of her hoodie and pulled out two small keychains shaped like pistols. With a quick flick of her wrists, they expanded into real six-shooter revolvers. These weapons were crafted with the help of Charles Beckendorf, a talented son of Hephaestus. As soon as the first target appeared beside a tree, she took careful aim and hit it dead center. Moving swiftly, she scanned the area for another target, her mind briefly wandering to the choices that led her to these particular weapons. When she and her twin sister, Annabeth, were younger, they had spent years on the run, hiding from monsters that wanted nothing more than to capture them. At just 7 years old, Naruko knew she wasn't strong enough to fight them off in hand-to-hand combat. Fortunately, she had always been interested in slingshots and used them to create distractions, buying enough time for her and Annabeth to escape. 2 more targets were hit as they hung from tree branches, but despite her accuracy, she could feel frustration bubbling inside her. Her sharp gaze locked onto 2 more targets, and she struck them down with a little more force than necessary. The reason? The difficult journey it had taken to reach Camp Half-Blood. Back then, she and Annabeth had been picked up by 2 other demigods, one of whom was Luke, a son of Hermes. Annabeth had admired him, convinced she could help him change for the better. Naruko wasn't so sure. The other was someone Naruko herself had once looked up to, Talia, a daughter of Zeus. Alongside them was their satyr friend and protector, Grover. Throughout their long journey together, they had become like a family. During their travels, they had come across old televisions displaying classic cartoons, Looney Tunes, to be precise. That was where Naruko got the idea to swap her slingshot for something more effective. Guns. The problem? No one was going to sell a firearm to a child. When she tried, the shop owners had only laughed and shooed her away. Desperate, she had taken a toy gun instead, modifying it little by little as they traveled. Using whatever scraps she could find, rusty nails, screws, and anything small enough to fit, she had managed to make it functional. It wasn't much, but at the time, it was enough. A single tear slipped from her eye, throwing off her next shot slightly, though the target shattered nonetheless. Her thoughts drifted to her last moments with Talia. When a massive horde of monsters cornered them just before reaching Camp Half-Blood, Talia had stayed behind to hold them off, giving Naruko and Annabeth the chance to escape. Before running, Naruko had pressed her handmade gun into Talia's hands, hoping it would help. Talia had smiled sadly, accepting the weapon with a nod before giving Naruko one last hug. With precise movements, Naruko eliminated the remaining targets as she approached the clearing. For a long time, she had blamed herself for what happened to Talia. When her father, Zeus, transformed Talia into a tree to protect her spirit, it had only made Naruko feel worse. But over time, she had come to terms with it. She had done everything she could. Still, she had missed Talia deeply, and when the Golden Fleece revived her, Naruko had never felt more relieved. Leaping into the air, she took aim at a high-hanging target. She fired mid-jump, then landed gracefully atop Zeus' fist. Looking up at the sky, she thought to herself, "I made a promise, Lord Zeus, that I would protect my friends. I swore on the river Styx, and I won't fail when the time comes." "Hey, watch out, you idiot!" a voice shouted in panic. Whoa. Naruko barely had time to react before dodging to the side, narrowly avoiding the massive claw of a scorpion monster. How did I forget these things are in the forest? I must have gone too deep. No matter, I need to take it down quickly. The scorpion lunged again, its sharp pincers aiming for her. She swiftly ducked, dropping her revolvers. She knew they wouldn't be able to pierce the creature's thick shell. My best advantage is its poor vision during the day. I need to keep my distance, that's my specialty. She backflipped as the monster's stinger struck the ground where she had been moments before. Landing smoothly, she reached into her hoodie's pockets again and pulled out 2 more keychains, this time, shaped like a pair of Glocks, These were perfect for the situation. If she could land a shot on its eyes, she would have the upper hand. She took a few careful shots, managing to hit one of its eyes. The creature screeched in pain, now blinded on one side and more aggressive than ever. Just as she was about to come up with a strategy to finish it off, a sharp pain shot through her head. It was a sensation she was all too familiar with. Though she had been born in this world, she often received visions, fragments of memories from a past life. And, as usual, they always struck at the worst possible moments. In the middle of a battle. The past Naruko had once battled a formidable opponent, Gaara of the Sand, a person who would later become one of her trusted friends. But why was she suddenly experiencing a memory she was already familiar with? The events unfolded just as they had before. Her past self endured a relentless barrage of sand shuriken, taking a considerable beating. Then, she executed an unusual yet effective combination of shadow clones, allowing her to land a decisive blow. Using a well-placed kunai, she managed to strike Gaara's sand armor, shattering it with an explosive tag. With the armor weakened, her past self was able to gain the upper hand, if only briefly, using sheer numbers. Just as suddenly as it appeared, the vision faded, leaving Naruko deep in thought. If she had interpreted the memory correctly, it was a lesson: find an enemy's weak spot and exploit it. The realization clicked: she had an explosive tag in her pocket. Given all the knowledge she had absorbed from past experiences, it was no surprise that she had learned how to make one. They were a common tool used by many in battle. If this was the strategy she needed to use, so be it. However, unlike Gaara, this scorpion-like creature's weak point wasn't in its armor, it was on its face. She recalled that creatures like this often had vulnerabilities, and in many cases, weapons were needed to strike those weak points effectively. But before she could act, she was jolted back to reality. "Oh, you reckless troublemaker, this is exactly why Chiron worries about you," came a sharp voice just before someone tackled her out of the way. A powerful tail strike crashed into the ground where she had stood moments ago. Looking up, she found herself staring at the girl who had just saved her. Drew Tanaka, a daughter of Aphrodite, was now sitting on top of her, brushing dirt off her once pristine clothes. As always, she wore the signature orange camp t-shirt, neatly tucked into a pair of fashionable shorts, accentuated by a pink belt and stylish shoes, both of which were now covered in dust. Adorned with bracelets and a pearl necklace, her appearance reflected her lineage. She had delicate features, dark black hair styled in perfect ringlets, and striking brown eyes highlighted with pink eyeliner. Shaking herself from her thoughts, Naruko realized the scorpion was preparing to strike again. Acting quickly, she grabbed Drew by the shoulder, rolling them both out of harm's way. This time, Naruko ended up on top. Drew smirked up at her. "Oh? Finally making your move on me, Han?" Naruko sighed and helped them both to their feet. "Focus, Drew. I have a plan, but I need you to distract it with your charm speak." Drew hesitated, momentarily forgetting the looming danger. "All right, I guess, but you know I don't like fighting." "I'm not asking you to fight," Naruko replied, exasperated. "Just distract it. I'll take care of the rest." "Fine, but you owe me," Drew pouted before turning her attention to the monster. Flashing a sweet smile, she said in a melodic voice, "All right, big guy, focus on me now. But be a dear and don't attack, okay?" The creature hesitated, staring at her intently. Drew shifted uncomfortably under its gaze but took its lack of aggression as a success. "Now, sit down and be a good boy." To her surprise, the scorpion obeyed, settling onto the ground with its legs splayed out. Naruko blinked. She had always known charm speak was powerful, but Drew made it look effortless. Shaking her head, she quickly retrieved a paper tag from her hoodie and sprinted toward the creature. Dodging past its tail, she leapt onto its back and slapped the tag directly between its eyes. Landing gracefully next to Drew, she smirked. In the immortal words of an eccentric guy from my memories, art is an explosion. With that, she activated the tag, setting off a controlled blast that shattered the monster's face. The creature let out a piercing cry, writhing in pain. Even as the creature lay severely weakened, Naruko's expression darkened. She pulled out her weapons and, without hesitation, continued her assault until the monster was fully defeated. Only when she heard the telltale click-click of empty magazines did she stop, as if waking from a trance. Lowering her weapons, she turned to Drew, only to find the girl staring at her with a troubled expression. Naruko's heart sank. "It happened again, didn't it?" she asked quietly. Drew nodded hesitantly. "Why, yeah. It's kind of scary, you know?" A wave of guilt washed over Naruko. She looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." Drew didn't reply right away, but the concern in her eyes spoke volumes. Drew took a steadying breath before offering a reassuring smile, tilting her chin up so Naruko could see that she wasn't afraid. "Don't overthink it. I know you're still learning to control it. It might seem overwhelming, but I know you. You'll bounce back to being yourself. Besides, you're not going to scare me away." "Hey, figures," Naruko responded with a small, bittersweet smile. "But thanks, Drew." "Don't mention it," Drew replied with a grin before her expression turned deadpan. "Like, ever." The blonde nodded, and they began making their way back to camp. As they walked, Naruko pulled a small notebook from one of her pockets, seemingly uninterested in retrieving the spoils of their battle. Juniper, noticing this, quickly picked up the abandoned item and discreetly handed it to Drew before walking away. Flipping through the notebook, Naruko skimmed through pages filled with sketches, diagrams, and extensive notes. She had documented every memory that surfaced, big or small, though they appeared without any clear order, jumping from early childhood moments to more recent experiences without a pattern. Through careful study and observation, she had started replicating ninja-like techniques, finding success by researching the abilities of gods and demigods. They, too, wielded a form of energy similar to chakra, though it functioned differently. Naruko had coined the term divine chakra to describe it. It was the source of their power, allowing them to control their domains. While demigods technically possessed this energy, most rarely used it to its full potential, which was why they didn't reach the same strength as gods. Naruko, however, was different. Through extensive research, she discovered that demigods could, in fact, access both chakra and divine chakra. With dedicated training, she learned to wield both effectively, and the results had been intriguing, though that was a topic for another time. Drew glanced at the notebook and noticed Naruko had flipped to a section detailing memories from her past, or, rather, her past self's life. That was still a confusing concept to wrap her head around. "What memory was it this time?" Drew asked curiously. "My battle against Gaara," Naruko replied. "But this time, it focused on me using that energy-based explosion technique." Drew immediately burst into laughter. "Wow, your past self was such a dork. Using a variation of a move that had been used on you before." "True," Naruko admitted. "But the attack was effective, and it applied well to our recent battle. Speaking of which, flirting during a fight?" "Seriously?" She raised an eyebrow, clearly not understanding the reasoning behind it. Drew's face turned slightly red. "Oh, come on, Brainiac. I'm a daughter of Aphrodite. It's kind of my thing, so sue me." Then, with a teasing smirk, she added, "But one of these days, I will win you over." Naruko snorted, jotting down a note in her book. "Not likely." Now, most people found it odd that Naruko and Drew were even friends. After all, Drew had a reputation. Many saw her as someone who toyed with people's feelings, particularly breaking hearts for fun. Being the daughter of Aphrodite, she once believed that was simply part of who she was supposed to be, making others fall for her only to leave them behind. But no matter how hard she tried, neither her natural charm nor her charm speak had any effect on Naruko, which frustrated her to no end. She often wondered if it had something to do with the madness. No. That couldn't be it. Naruko was just completely oblivious when it came to love and romance. At first, Drew had thought Naruko was just another nerdy daughter of Athena, but she had quickly realized there was more to her than that. Naruko was kind, genuinely so. She had even told Drew that love wasn't about playing games or breaking hearts, and she was determined to show her what real love actually meant. Was that why she kept rejecting Drew's attempts at flirting? No, it was simpler than that. Naruko just didn't want to be another name on a list, another person who got hurt and tossed aside. At first, Drew had planned to make Naruko fall for her just to prove a point. But somewhere along the way, that challenge had become irrelevant. Naruko had effortlessly worked her way into Drew's life with her kindness, and somehow, they had become friends, true friends. They accepted each other, flaws and all. Even if Naruko was clueless about romance, she was surprisingly insightful when it came to understanding people, exactly what one would expect from a daughter of Athena. Drew looked at her friend with a smile. So, aside from that little incident, how do you think you did, Han? Despite what happened toward the end, I believe my training was sufficient, Naruko remarked casually, her attention still focused on her book. Like a true daughter of Athena, she often became completely absorbed in her studies, especially reading. I know you think it's unnecessary, but you should keep practicing with your specialized weapon, she continued. You can't always rely on the camp to keep you safe. Especially considering what happened when Tantalus was in charge. Drew frowned at the mention of that name. Yeah, but he's gone now, and Chiron is back, so why worry about it? That's just an illusion of security, Naruko pointed out, closing her notebook. Of course, she would be the realist here. With a possible war looming because of Luke, Chiron won't be able to protect everyone all the time. Drew sighed in resignation. Fine. But I still say my weapon makes me look ridiculous. She paused before smirking at her friend. Unless you secretly like that kind of thing? Naruko gave her an exasperated look before shaking her head with a tired smile. Seriously? Hey, just saying. Drew teased with a grin, hands behind her back. This kind of banter between them was nothing new, and Naruko had long since learned not to take her quips too seriously. Drew's expression then turned more serious. But honestly, you need to be more careful in battle. These sudden memories of yours could get you seriously injured one day. And then Clarice will have my head because I was supposed to be watching out for you. Oh, come on. My aunt isn't that bad, Naruko protested, waving off the concern, until she noticed Drew's unimpressed stare. Okay, maybe she is a little overprotective. A little? Drew scoffed. That's an understatement. She dragged you along on her quest for the Golden Fleece and treated you like a rookie. Sure, she made you a stronger fighter, but she went a bit overboard. She just cares a lot, Naruko admitted with a sheepish shrug. She loved her aunt, but there was no denying that Clarice had a strong, sometimes overwhelming, sense of protectiveness, toward both her and Annabeth. Maybe it was because Naruko had fully accepted their grandfather, Ares. Or maybe it had something to do with the madness. You got that right. The familiar voice made them both jump. They turned to see Clarice approaching with a smirk. They hadn't even realized they had wandered back to the main area of camp near the big house. Clarice narrowed her eyes suspiciously. You two weren't up to anything questionable in the forest, were you? Naruko sighed. Nope. I was practicing moving target drills, and Drew was observing. Juniper and some of her friends even helped out. And I had to save you, twice, from a scorpion because you got distracted, Drew added with a smug grin. She enjoyed moments like this, where she got to poke fun at Naruko. Oh, and you left your prize back there, so here. She pulled out a small object, a bullet crafted from the creature's venom gland. Clarice shook her head as Naruko took the bullet, muttering about having plenty more in her cabin. I thought I trained you better than to let yourself get distracted on the battlefield, she said, arms crossed in a way that made Naruko nervous. Or is it your company that's the problem? Hey, don't blame me. She sure wasn't distracted by me, Drew said with an exaggerated pout. Clarice raised an eyebrow but let it go. Fine, whatever. Naruko, Chiron sent me to find you. Looks like you've got a quest. Both girls' eyes widened at that. Naruko finally spoke. Well, Annabeth is not going to like this. Meanwhile, on Mount Olympus. A few moments earlier, the grand hall of Mount Olympus was filled with the usual chatter of gods and goddesses. However, Zeus remained unusually quiet. His uncharacteristic silence did not go unnoticed by his wife, Hera, or his brothers, Poseidon and Hades. Finally, Poseidon broke the silence. Zeus, what's on your mind? You called this meeting, yet you've barely said a word. I was enjoying the peace. Why did you have to remind him to talk? Hades muttered. Zeus, if he was irritated by the remark, didn't show it. That alone was enough to concern his elder brother. Finally, he let out a long sigh and addressed his court. I've been reflecting on recent events. I'm worried. Oh, come on, father. Why the concern? Apollo asked, half joking, though his twin sister Artemis looked at their father with more concern. Poseidon smirked. It's rare to see the all-powerful ruler of Olympus troubled. What could possibly be bothering you? Hera shot her brother and stepson a sharp glare before turning to Zeus. Dear, what is it? Zeus exhaled deeply. Our father has been influencing recent events to his advantage. He has clouded the judgment of a child of Hermes, he noted, casting a glance toward the messenger god, who wore a sorrowful expression. Not to mention orchestrating my daughter's return alongside Poseidon's son being present. I fear that may have doomed us all. Hades, previously only half listening, now focused his attention. Wait, I'm supposed to be the one with the gloomy outlook. What exactly are you getting at? Our oath upon the river Styx has been broken, and we all know that such actions come with severe consequences. I suspect that this situation is a direct result. The return of our father and the inevitable war he will bring upon us. Poseidon's expression grew serious. So our past mistakes are finally coming back to haunt us. That's troubling. Even you have to admit that our strength has waned over the centuries. Zeus clenched his fist. I am fully aware of that, and I take responsibility for the position we are in. I had another child, and your own demigod child only further complicated matters. However, I highly doubt that the existence of Hades' children, who remained trapped in the Lotus Hotel, has contributed to this situation. Hades looked momentarily shocked that his brother was aware of his long-lost children. Don't give me that look, brother, Zeus continued. I am king of the gods. Of course, I have known. But do not worry, I harbor no ill will toward them. Demeter crossed her arms, glaring at Zeus. I can't say the same for my daughter. She won't be pleased to hear that you have betrayed her trust yet again. It's bad enough you took her from me, and now she isn't even enough for you. Sister, now is not the time to revisit this age-old argument, Zeus retorted, irritation creeping into his voice. We must focus on finding a solution. I have always relished battle, Ares admitted, his tone unusually somber. But fighting against him again will be no simple feat. Agreed, but I'd rather leave the burden of this task to our children, Dionysus said, his voice laced with disinterest. They will inevitably play a role in this, Zeus acknowledged. His gaze flickered toward Hermes, who stiffened at the mention of Luke. That boy is already being used by our father. We must be prepared for when the time comes. I concur. A soft yet firm voice spoke from the hearth at the center of the room. A young girl, gently tending the flames, lifted her head. It was Hestia, the kindest among them. However, there is another issue. When our father rises, he will undoubtedly seek his weapon, the very same one you three once used to defeat him. She referred, of course, to Kronos' legendary scythe, forged from one of Gaia's strongest metals, adamantium. Zeus sighed. How had he overlooked that detail? Oh, right, after hiding it, they had asked Hecate to erase the memory of its location from their minds. In that case, we must send one of our children to retrieve it. That would be an impossible task, Poseidon argued. We could have hidden it anywhere. A demigod finding it quickly is highly unlikely. In fact, it could take years. We may have a few years before Luke completes his plan, Apollo interjected with a casual shrug. You're not helping, Poseidon growled. And this could prove more dangerous than any other quest we've assigned them. If our own power has diminished, what does that say about our children's abilities? He has a valid point, Hephaestus remarked thoughtfully. I could lead the hunt in search of it, Artemis offered. Why send just one hero when a team of experienced hunters could take on the task? Zeus rubbed his temple in frustration. Unfortunately, that won't work. We collaborated with other pantheons to conceal the weapon, and as the children of Kronos, we made it so that only a demigod could find and retrieve it. That was a terrible decision, Poseidon muttered. And now, we only remember enough to provide vague clues. I believe I wrote something down about it somewhere. At the time, we believed it was a sound plan, Hades admitted gruffly. We never thought our father would have a chance at returning. Look at how much time has passed. Athena, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. Might I suggest a demigod for the task? Zeus nodded, smiling slightly at his daughter. Both of his daughters possessed brilliant minds, each in their own way, and he took great pride in that. I propose one of my own, Naruko Chase. Ares smirked. I like that kid. Though my daughter tends to be overly protective of her. He let out a low chuckle. Maybe now I can finally give her those weapons I had in mind. In any case, Athena continued, undeterred, Naruko is the best candidate for this quest. She is highly intelligent and has deciphered the secret to advancing as a demigod. Hey! That might have something to do with the girl's rather unusual birth, Poseidon murmured. Athena narrowed her eyes at the sea god, her thoughts drifting back to the circumstances surrounding the girl's birth. Originally, she had only intended to have Annabeth with Frederick, but then an unexpected request from a Shinto goddess had changed everything. That favor had led to Naruko being born alongside Annabeth, not that Athena had any objections. Perhaps this had all been orchestrated for a greater purpose. What was truly going on? She would need to investigate further? Zeus observed Athena's decision with approval. He had always been fond of the girl. Since he was no longer permitted to have children of his own and Artemis had no interest in providing him with grandchildren, he found a sense of pride and reassurance in Athena's offspring. They were remarkable in their own ways, and Naruko stood out from the rest in a fascinating manner. Very well, I accept your choice, Zeus agreed, though his expression turned more serious. However, I do have concerns. Will her condition hinder her ability to complete this quest? Athena's expression darkened slightly at the question. The madness was an uncommon trait among her children. While many inherited the fatal flaw of pride from her, some carried madness, and most struggled to control it. Naruko, however, seemed to be managing it better than most, perhaps due to those unusual recollections of a past life, no doubt the influence of that Shinto goddess. But where exactly did the madness originate? Was it from Athena herself, Ares, or the mysterious goddess? The uncertainty was troubling. Nevertheless, she remained steadfast in her belief. No, she will be fine. I have complete confidence in her abilities. Very well, Zeus said with finality. Dionysus, return to camp and inform young Naruko of her quest. The oracle should be able to guide her in the right direction. We will reconvene to address our other concerns later. With that, he dismissed them, leaving the matter in motion. Dear YouTube family. That's a wrap for now. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more exciting videos. Stay tuned for what's coming next. Thank you for your support. Best regards. Anime Dreams.